Thank you, Elizabeth. And I would like to thank all the NCTAF staff who are here, which is Elizabeth. Sophie, if you'd stand up for a minute. I don't know if everybody's met you in person yet, but Sophie joined us in the fall to lead the TLINC initiative and has just been doing an outstanding job of coming in, moving very quickly and getting this meeting organized. And then sitting next to her is Carrie Burke. Carrie, stand up and we'll see you. Who has been her literally right-hand person right there to make this happen. Out in the hallway is Ryan Brookshire. Thank you, Ryan. And our chief tweeter and blogger for this meeting is Laura Coscarelli. I think I see Jeff Dilkson here somewhere behind the post, who's the leader of our Learning Studio initiative.
And I will also be the head timekeeper.
And he's the timekeeper. And Melinda George is our vice president, joined us about a year and a half ago, who keeps us all moving. So thank you. This is I was asked how big our staff is. I always say, you mean how small our staff is. And we have 9 of us, and it's a tremendous staff and get a lot done. So thank you all for what you're doing. It's a great way to start the new year. Get to see a lot of old friends here and also some new faces. I don't see any old friends with new faces, but we're really happy that you've all been able to join us, and I think we're going to have an exciting day and a half here. So it's my job to talk about kind of the big picture context for why do we have TLINC in the first place. I'm going to want to talk about some of the questions that you have in front of you. Drivers of change and agents of change. So what's driving this? Why do we have this? And I would just review for you that NCTAF started in the mid-90s, 94 to 96. NCTAF came out with a report titled What Matters Most, Teaching for America's Future. And that report actually shifted a national dialogue at that point that said that the reason that we were struggling to improve our schools is that teachers were the problem. And that up until that time, we had a lot of emphasis on kind of teacher-proof curriculum, a lot of very prescriptive approaches to teaching and to teachers because there wasn't confidence in the professional ability of teachers to solve the problem. What Matters Most really changed that conversation, and since then, we've been echoing that message. We say teachers are not the problem, teachers are the solution. And it put forward 5 steps. High standards, strong preparation, strong induction into give teachers a strong start into the schools, rewarding career paths, national board, and organizing schools for success, a real learning culture in a school. If you took those 5 steps in tandem, you can create a powerful learning organization. What Matters Most focused on what I would call our classic teaching model in this country, which has become the global model really, which is artisan teaching practice. It's a notion that teaching is an individual craft, that teachers are artisan practitioners, that they perfect their craft over time, and many teachers who become accomplished teachers are just amazing artisans in the true sense of artisan crafts in the arts and all of the performing arts. So we have this model of teaching as a standalone profession, with each teacher perfecting that artisanship on their own, largely. They're pulling in all kinds of resources to the classroom, and each one of them has a professional practice that is really a personal practice. That's worked for us for a long time, but it won't take us forward because we don't have a system in place for those artisans to work together, to learn together, to share their knowledge, skill, the way that many other professions have, so that they build on each other's strengths. Following what matters most, one of the challenges that what matters most issues is that it said that if teaching matters, then within 10 years from 1996 to 2006, every child in America should have a competent, caring, qualified teacher in a school organized for success. When I came in about 2001 to assume the leadership of NCTAF, we were halfway to 2006, and it was pretty clear that every child was not going to have that. And the question was, why? And the conventional wisdom at that point was teacher shortage. We can't give every child that highly qualified teacher because we can't find enough. And the national policy debate, the newspaper articles were about where are we going to find enough teachers? And every summer you would read articles about school district X is going to open and they don't have enough teachers, okay? Teacher shortage. So we did a second study to try to figure out why is it that we can't get enough teachers into the classroom. And with Kathleen Fulton's leadership and writing expertise, we produced No Dream Denied. What we concluded from that study was actually quite different than the notion of a teacher shortage. What we found is that we have an ample supply of teachers, they just don't stay in the classroom. That after 3 years we could lose a third of the teachers we prepared. After 5 years we could lose over 40% of the teachers. So that our problem is not a shortage problem, it's an attrition problem. We prepare just an abundant supply of teachers. There's actually more certified teachers in every state in the country who are not in the classroom than are in the classroom. So in other words, we could replace the whole teaching workforce with teachers who are certified who are not in the classroom right now. So that was a pretty startling finding for us, and we put that out and we changed the national debate from shortage to retention. And when we looked at why do these teachers leave, all the research we could look at, including the SAS data, said they leave for 3 reasons. First is they say they may have been in a good teacher preparation program, but they don't feel prepared for the challenges they face now. That they're in a school starting out that's nothing like the school where they were during their internship or their practice teaching. Their preparation didn't prepare them for the school they're actually in, a challenging school. The second thing they say to us is, now that I'm here, I've been thrown in sink or swim. I have no support. So not only do I not feel prepared, I don't have anybody to support me now that I'm here. I'm struggling alone. And then the third thing they said was, I don't see a rewarding career path in front of me. I could get this down, and some teachers who would stay for 4 or 5 years would say, look, I've really figured this out. I'm a good teacher, but I don't see how I grow in this profession. I could still be the 4th grade teacher or the high school algebra teacher 20 years from now doing the same job. How do I grow in the profession without leaving the classroom? So we took a look at that. Kathleen and I were looking at that, having come out of the technology world, and the first thing we said was, it's the 21st century. No one should say they're alone in the 21st century. No one should say that they're in their workspace without the support they need to succeed. We have the most connected generation we've ever had. They should have real-time access to the support they need when they need it, okay? So that's how TLINC was hatched. It was hatched actually to address those 3 challenges. Preparation for the schools you'll actually teach in, support once you're there, and rewarding professional growth. You'll be connected to a community of more accomplished teachers. So our goal was to create an environment blended face-to-face and online in which novice teachers during their teacher preparation phase would become members of a professional community that is both online and face-to-face. So they have that real-time access. So that we're not going to a new teacher in her first year when she's struggling and say, oh, and now we want you to learn how to participate in this community. They're already participating in that community because that's been the way that they've prepared. So they've prepared in a collaborative culture for a collaborative teaching culture. We're moving from the artisan practice, the solo practice, to a collaborative professional culture. Professional learning communities, call them whatever you like. But we're rapidly moving from one teaching model, which is teachers will do this job alone, to a model in which teachers will work in teams, collaborative professional communities in their school. So the first goal of TLINC was to embed teachers from their outset in that collaborative community. The second goal was to link them to more accomplished teachers so they have real-time support, including faculty back on the campus, but accomplished teachers in their school districts. So they have the support, but now they also see, oh, there is a growth path. I'm working with a more accomplished teacher who's my coach. I could do that. I could become that person, okay? Our third goal was to provide a feedback loop to the universities, to the schools of education, so that by staying in real-time contact and connection with their students, they had the feedback that they need to improve their own programs, okay? So that they were no longer in a situation of saying, you know, our teachers graduate, we don't know where they are, and we don't know how they're performing, so we don't really know whether what we did to prepare them worked or not. Well, they would know now because they would have this real-time feedback. So the goals were, again, of TLINC. First one was better turn that retention problem around by preparing teachers well for the challenges they're going to face, by connecting them to those schools. Second, once they're in those schools, give them continuous professional support in an online community so they can grow and accelerate rapidly. Third, give the preparation programs themselves the feedback they need to improve. So we've been working now for over 6 years. We means you, have been working to make that happen, and we're in various stages of progress towards those goals. Are we there yet? Is it done? No. Are we on the way there? Yes. And so we're here today to kind of take stock of where we are, how far each one of us is getting on each one of those challenges, and what we need to do next. Now, I just want to pause here to share a story with you about how technology evolves and develops, and why we need to understand that we're in a transformational remodel process. We're changing the organizations, the structures we're in, by remodeling them while we're in them. In the 50s, I grew up in a house that my parents were remodeling constantly because they started out with a little house, starter house for the two of them. I came along, then my sister came along, then my brother came along. The house was constantly being remodeled and essentially transformed, so you would not recognize the house I left when I went to college from the house I was born into, okay? Transformational remodeling is a process. It's not a one-time event. It doesn't just happen and it's done. You don't just step from what you were doing before to now full-board TLINC. It takes time to remodel. The story I want to share with you, I've told before, is called Steam Engines and Wooden Sailing Ships. So I happen to make, as a hobby, wooden model sailing ships. In the middle of the 1800s, the sailing industry, the clipper ship industry, had reached its zenith. They had ships, tea clippers they were called. They brought tea from China to England. They could cross the Atlantic in 11 days, which was very fast, under sail, okay? And there's tremendous competition to be able to go faster, because whoever could get to the market first with the new cargo would get the highest price in England, okay? So there was constant struggles about how to improve the performance of sailing ships. At the same time, steam engines had been invented. Steam engines were being used to develop the railroad. Some people got the idea that, what if we put a steam engine in a ship? Because the biggest problem we have with sailing ships is they're very fast when there's wind, and when there's wind that's favorable to the direction we're trying to go. But when it's not, we don't go anywhere. Okay? So if we had a steam engine that could make that ship go when there was no wind, we'd have an advantage over the competitors. So they started doing that. They started putting steam engines in wooden sailing ships. And you can see pictures of sailing ships with 3 masts with the sails, with the smokestacks in between the masts, okay? So they did have an advantage. Those ships could maneuver in and out of port under power. They could make way when there was no wind. They had a tremendous advantage. The problem is they had a tremendous disadvantage. First disadvantage was the crews on the ships, the sailors. The sailors said, we don't know anything about steam engines. We got to be up here manning the sails, sailing the ship. Who's going to run the steam engine? Okay? We're not doing it. Okay? Second problem they had is steam engines and the coal to fuel them are big and heavy, and they made the ships sail really badly. Third engine is steam engines have fires in them. Not a good thing to have in a wooden ship. And they burned down a lot of ships. Okay? So the outcome of that story is they never really achieved the potential of steam power until they totally restructured ships. They totally redesigned ships. They took down masts, got rid of the sails. Sailors don't have to take care of those anymore. They redesigned the hulls. They built the ships out of metal. Totally redesigned the organization from stem to stern, literally. They remodeled, they transformationally remodeled. Now that took a couple of decades, and they retrained the sailors to do new work. Now, a few years ago, about 20 years ago, Phil Schlechte said that any organization that adopts a new technology without fundamentally changing roles, rules, and relationships has wasted its investment. Okay? Because you will just do old work with new tools. So if we try to do TLINC and we think that all we need to do is bring smartphones and tablets and things into our classrooms and we don't have to change anything else, we're not going to get where we're trying to go. If we're using this, which has more computing power in my hand than Apollo 11 had when it landed on the moon, and we're just using it as a classroom tool, we're wasting our time. Okay? So we have some tremendous drivers of change. First driver is the students you're teaching, and the students you'll teach from now through the future, is the first generation that grew up mobile. They grew up mobile, and they grew up digitally social, in a digital social network. So if we continue to teach them to be artisan, standalone teachers, and we teach them with faculty who are artisan, standalone faculty and standalone classrooms, we're teaching them for the past. We've got to restructure essentially everything that we're doing. Ask ourselves whether it's really courses that we're about, whether it's really programs that we're about, whether it's really tight boundaries between universities and the K-12 community. Okay? It's one learning environment. The point I keep making, and this will be one of the last points because everybody's waving flags at me here. Jeff is holding up one finger, and I know that's not a good thing. We keep thinking of bring these tools into the classroom, bring these tools into the school, and they become ways to pull more content into the classroom. That's not the way we need to think going forward. We need to use these tools to plug our schools and classrooms into a global learning network. We are now in an open global learning ecosystem. All of our students and all of you participate every day, all day long, literally, in an open learning environment. We can't turn these off when we go in the classroom. We need to use these to plug our learning in the classroom into that learning environment. And we need to be preparing our teachers to think and teach that way. So those are some of the challenges we have ahead. So those are some of the drivers. We'll also talk about the agents of change. Who's going to make that happen? Who's going to do that remodel? That's you. You are the agents of change. You and your faculty and your cooperating teachers and your students. Okay? So you need to be thinking, I am the agent of change. If you're not, you'll become a target of change. Okay? And that's already happening on a lot of fronts for schools of education. So our goal with TLINC is to put you in a leadership position so you're showing the world what a different learning environment looks like. So thank you.